excited that you are able to join us for another virtual interview series. We have an awesome guest today. Glenn, who is a fabulous music producer, has an amazing bio, very long list of accolades and wonderful things that he's done. So I'm so excited to share and to have Glenn share today about what we're going to be talking about. So Glenn, it's good to have you.
Yeah, great to be here, April. I'm super pumped to talk about everything I've been through, and hopefully it's helpful to the students that are watching this.
I love it. So Glenn, would you take a few moments, just introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what you do, and where you're from?
Sure. I'm Glenn McRae. I don't have an official job title besides being an entrepreneur, and I wear a bunch of different hats because of that. And most recently, I've been a music producer, sound designer, composer, record label owner. In the last couple of years, I've worked with Nickelodeon, and along with my writing partner, Rob Hann, who's a veteran in the children's media space, we wrote, produced, sound designed, and mixed over 50 songs for Blue.
Oh.
An amazing project that we were super proud of. Continue to work with Nickelodeon on some other projects to this day. And that's been the most recent stuff, but I say that I retired after 10 years in the industry, mainly on the legal side of things, and music licensing and publishing. I worked at Netflix in their music licensing team. I worked at A&E doing what's called rights management, which is basically a paralegal for the TV and film productions that we were working with. And before that, I worked for a major independent music distribution company at the time called INgrooves. And I essentially worked with the founder of their music publishing division to launch that. So I was, boots on the ground, and got really involved and nerdy with the music publishing side of that early on in my career, which was about 10, 12 years ago at this point.
Oh, I mean, it just sounds so amazing. All the things that you've done. It sounds like you have a lot of different experience in this realm of music
Yeah.
production. And so, there may be some students out here that are interested in potentially pursuing a career like yours. Could you give a
Mhm.
little bit of detail into what your daily activities look like? What are some things that, students might want to know more about if they wanted to pursue a career like yours?
Yeah. So, day to day, it's the same kind of answer as what my job title is. It changes often.
Mhm.
Every day can be a little bit different, and it'll depend on what my focus is at the time. If I'm working on a project like I was with Nickelodeon with those 50 songs, that was became a routine for about a year and a half, but then that ended, and then it's up to me to figure out what what my next job is. So every day I'm recreating myself in a little bit, but there are a few key things that I make sure I do consistently every day to keep the wheels in motion, because I'm not an employee of anybody. I'm
Right.
my own boss, and I can get into later about the mindset shift that I had to go through and still deal with. But I make sure that I'm working on music every day, even if I'm not working on a specific project for a specific artist or client like Nickelodeon. I am just sharpening my sword and keeping up my craft. And I left the industry from doing all the legal work, which I was very good at, but wasn't passionate about, to go back to my original passion, which was creating music, writing songs. And so I make sure, like, even if it's a little bit every day, that consistency of working on my craft and working, even if it's just like, I'm going to make some drum loops today, and I don't feel like writing a whole melody or a whole thing. I'm just going to make drums, so that when I need a bunch of drum loops and a client calls and says, hey, we need a bunch of songs really fast. Oh, I've got all these things that are already ideas that are started that I can pull from, and I can work smart rather than having to reinvent the wheel every time I sit down and, staring at a blank well, really a blank screen, but for an artist, blank canvas, that's the worst thing that you can possibly do. So I call it the throwing spaghetti at the wall method. If I at least get some stuff on the wall, stuff, ideas creatively down, then I can always, revisit them and interpret them for a new client. Some other things I make sure I do every day is reach out to friends of mine in the music and entertainment world, and sometimes those friends are people that can help me get work, that I past clients or something like that. And but lately, they're just collaborators and friends, and but it's always good to be top of mind and not stay hidden behind the scenes. As fun as it is to lock yourself away in the studio, if you're passionate about that sort of stuff, you have to get out there and put your face and name out there, and stay in touch with people.
I
And oh yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I
Yeah.
love that you mentioned connecting with people. That's one of the things that we share with students all the time is the
Hmm.
networking aspect and just, being in the community space. So I
Yeah.
love
No,
it.
that's such a key thing, and I'm sure we'll touch more on that. Or- Oh, the last thing sure I do, which I'm a really big advocate of, at least like personally, is self-care and taking care of my mental and physical health and spiritual health and all that good stuff. But mental health is super important to me. It's taken me a long time to learn how to set my own boundaries and priorities as an entrepreneur, and remind myself no one's going to tell me I need to take a break. No, I don't have a 9 to 5. I don't have a stopping point. So in theory, I can work day and night, but I can, as a, now 37-year-old, I can't do that for more than a day. When I was 22, I could, burn the candles at both ends, but I've had to grow and adapt. So it's important on both sides of, working for yourself to know and set those boundaries. Okay, this is what I'm going to work. Yes, I can work 24 hours a day in theory, and sometimes you get a call or a text at 3 a.m. in the morning for opportunity, and you might want to be up for those if that's where you find that you're getting work. But it's super important to manage your own well-being, because if you get an opportunity and you're pulling your hair out and really struggling, you're not going to do good work, and you're not going to show up as your full authentic self, which is what, as a creator, the client and the artist that you are collaborating with, they're asking for you to do that, and so that you can provide them with whatever it is that you're providing, if it's music production or recording or whatever the case may be.
Oh, yes. So one thing that I found very interesting as you were speaking, and I'm sure students will be interested as well. You mentioned when you get a call from a client, let's just say Netflix calls, and
Hmm.
they need a song or, whatever you might provide for them. Can you take
Yeah.
us through that process of getting the call, getting the new client? What does your work process look like to producing the end result?
Oh wow. So it's this is going to be my answer for a lot of these. It's a little different every time,
Yeah.
but I will say the key thing is, and I remind myself and everyone I work with of this saying: if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
Mhm.
So, and what I mean by that is, if you, like I said, I'm always creating music because that's what I love to do. I would do that whether I was getting paid for it or not. Um, and when those opportunities come, especially with regards to sync licensing, which is getting your music into TV and film and video game opportunities and advertisements, those opportunities have a very, very, very short window. You
Mhm.
know, it's Wednesday at noon. They might say we need something by 5 o'clock, and at 5:05 or 5:01, that door is closed and that opportunity is gone. And you might have the perfect thing for them, but if you're not organized enough to get it to them and provide them what they need in terms of the information and data beyond just the music and the audio file itself, and it's disorganized and you haven't labeled it properly, et cetera, it's gone. So a lot of the work is has to be proactive. You have to prepare yourself and act as if that opportunity is going to come. When it comes and they're looking for this specific thing that I'm really good at, I'm going to be ready. And you will beat out 95% of people, because even if they have better music and even if they're friends with such and such person, they're not organized like you are. They're not prepared for the opportunity. And I've also believe that opportunities will come when you're prepared. So you just have to mentally think, okay, that opportunity is out there. It's waiting for me. If I get prepared, I get organized, all my ducks are in a row, then the opportunities will come and I'll be ready for it. So that's a huge thing. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that's very important for students to understand that just being prepared, no matter what it is, even if you're not interested in music production, there's
Oh
always
yeah.
that you can do to, be sitting on go and ready. So,
Yeah, yeah. If you're uh, whatever it is that you want to get into, you're prepared by reading the five best books on that topic, even before you are working in that field, and you're just a nerd. I'm not. I'm a very proud nerd and a geek and obsessed about what I'm passionate about, and that's a huge part of being successful, whatever you want to do.
oh, I love it. I love it. So I know you don't always start out on top, right? You don't always start out getting a client like Netflix or Nickelodeon. So I'd
Mhm.
love to hear more about your journey from high school to where you are today. I know you mentioned earlier that you worked in the corporate space doing the legal and things like that. So what did that journey look like for you from when you were in high school to what you're doing now?
Yeah, journey is definitely a word for it. I'm 20 years removed from high school, so it's definitely been a journey. So, um, I'll try to give you the synopsis. I've got my puppy right there, kind of trying to say hi.
We
Hi.
can say hello.
Oh yeah. So I played in bands in high school. I'm a musician, lifelong at this point, since I was about 10, 12, 13 years old. I played bass in three or four different bands throughout high school. And then and I was just obsessed with reading, listening to, at the time of CDs, listening to music and reading liner notes, reading the credits. Who produced it? Oh, what's a producer do? What's a sound engineer do? Oh, I think that's, I keep seeing the same name. I keep seeing the same, this one label has such good music. I wonder why that is. And just being really curious about that sort of stuff. And at one point I wanted to go to college to become a sound engineer. And this is 2005 or so. And I had some people that I ran across that said, you know what, you don't want to do that. We're in the middle of a digital revolution. All the recording studios are becoming completely obsolete because we have Pro Tools and we have Logic and Fruity Loops, and you can get this little box and record everything at home off your home computer or laptop. So instead, you should study the business, you should study the music theory, you should study the fundamental stuff that won't really change that much. Obviously the business has changed, but like the core fundamentals, and you can always, get into a studio and become an engineer, just as an intern basically. So I took that advice very intelligently of me, and I went to college in New Orleans at Loyola University and studied music business there. And they had a great program with, uh, you know, they had just had a great core team of professors at the time, and got really active in the local music scene there in New Orleans and started recording rappers and bands at the school studio, and got keys to the studio, and really abused that privilege, but learned a ton in that process. And then after college, um, I was kind of lost, and I think a lot of people go through the same thing after college or after high school, where, all right, well, I got my degree, now what?
Mhm.
And Loyola was great, but it wasn't super connected to the industry, which is, New York, LA, Nashville, Atlanta to some degree. So I didn't have internships in those areas. So, and that's really how you get your foot in the door on the industry side. So, and I also had an entrepreneurial spirit in college. So I went back home. I'm from Connecticut originally. I started recording studio and production team with in New Haven with some people that I shouldn't have gotten involved with. I was taken advantage of. I signed a contract as a producer, what I thought was a management deal, but it really was a production deal, which is a big difference. Basically, I without their approval, I couldn't do anything with the music I was creating. And I in that process found out that the people I was dealing with were not people I wanted to be involved with. And so I left that situation, and I told myself I need to find a mentor, and I need to find the actual business work, because this stuff was like phony stuff. Um, and I had another friend, and going back to networking, I had a friend of my brother-in-law's, um, who was a mastering engineer. And so at one point I was working with him to learn what a mastering engineer does, and he was specializing in vinyl. Again, it's a journey. This is a whole thing.
Yeah.
And then I was like, no, what? I don't want to be a mastering engineer. That's not what I want to do. I want to learn what the business is, because I had just gotten screwed over by these phony people with this production deal. I don't want that to happen to me again. I want to know what I didn't know. And my friend who's the mastering engineer said, "Hey, there's this guy. He's the real deal. He's in the industry. You should, and he's looking for an assistant." So this guy, Olivier Chaston, um, I DM'd him on Facebook. I knew he was born in France, and I knew he worked in records and publishing, and he worked at the time for Green Sleeves, which was the biggest reggae label in the world. You've got the Marley family, and then you've got everyone else, and everyone else is involved with Green Sleeves and VP Records. And I DM'd him, and this goes to show like boldness, like pays dividends for sure. And I went to Google Translate, and I said, tell me how to say, you stop looking for an assistant, I'm your assistant now, in French, right? And that was my opener. And then I let him know what I was trying to do, and I went to college, and I got a meeting with him in New York, and that led to me becoming his assistant. And then shortly after that, he was hired to launch INgrooves music publishing division around 2013, and I was his first hire. And I literally had no idea what we were doing, but he and I essentially built a publishing company from the ground up. And then as it grew, we hired an admin person and an A&R person, and it grew from there. And I learned the sync licensing world, and it was like the whole. And I moved to New York, and the whole industry kind of was like, "Oh wow, I'm here now." But it took me that whole journey and having to like basically reinvent myself at 25 or so, when a lot of people were at the same age were management had moved up, and I was just basically an intern at the time. So I say that just to remind people, like, you can always reinvent yourself. You can always restart. I've reinvented myself at least 3 times throughout my career, and it's fine. No one really cares. If you're good at what you do and you're nice and you're humble and you're smart, then people will work with you regardless of where you come from, your background, your age, whatever it is, doesn't matter.
Glenn, that is such a good story. Like I love that you shared that journey with us because, you know, exactly what you said. It does take some time for you to really get to know what you want to do. And I think so
Hmm.
much pressure is put on young people at 18 years old. So you
Oh
have to
yeah.
know exactly. And a lot of times it does take a journey just like yours and obstacles to overcome those obstacles to really
Yeah.
figure out what it is that you want to do with your life, and it can always change. Two things that I love that you said. One is find a mentor. I love
Hmm.
that advice. That is
Yeah.
awesome. And then
Yeah.
two, the fact that you were bold enough to reach out to someone and to just send them a direct message. We have the world at our fingertips, whether it's Instagram
Yeah,
or
you do.
TikTok or Facebook. Students, you have direct access to these people. And sometimes just sending a message can completely change your life. And it sounds like it did for you.
I definitely think it has. That's one of those moments, and I try to remind myself when my anxiety or my fear takes over and I don't think I can do something. It's like, well, you one message, like you said, one message changed my whole trajectory and got me out of a situation that I didn't want to be in, which was in Connecticut, where I grew up, where I was trying to leave and do other things and bigger things. I had a vision for myself, and sometimes you just gotta say, F it, and shoot your shot. Like, the worst case scenario, and if we go back to my example, the worst thing he could have done was ignore my DM. And then I
Hmm.
would have said, you know what? I'm somebody else. I'm free. And if it's not this person, I know I need to find a mentor. I know I need to get into the industry to pursue what I want to pursue. So it wouldn't have been a failure. The only failure I would have had in that case, or any situation in my career, would be giving up
Yeah.
and not taking action and just letting, surrendering and saying, oh, it's too hard. I can't.
I think so many people
So
are held
yeah.
back from rejection, just like you said. But it's one of those things. Like, move on to the next person, find someone else that you can do it with, and I just think
Yeah,
that's such great advice. I know we
absolutely.
talked a little bit about some obstacles that you had. Is there any other advice that you would give to students about if they face struggles or they face hard times in their future? Because everybody does. What advice do you have for them to move forward and really grow from that?
I I think that a lot of times, if you're going through, the saying is that if you're going through hell, keep going, keep walking, and the only way out of those situations is oftentimes through it. So you have to accept that there's going to be struggle. If you're struggling, you have to, okay, this is a challenge, this is an obstacle, this is a struggle I'm dealing with. I have to keep moving forward. I have to get out of it. I have to move, ahead. And that's the biggest thing, is to recognize when you're dealing with that sort of stuff, and to keep going, even if it's just a baby step. Those baby steps add up a lot. Um, and I've had a great career, but there have been a lot of times when I've struggled, and that's the best advice I can give, is reach out to people, um, keep keep moving forward. You're never Don't count yourself out. No one's really even paying attention to you. I think a lot of times we get in our heads and think that people are watching us, and everyone's really just focused on themselves.
Mhm.
That's the spotlight effect. So if you just recognize that, you you can just move forward, and nothing is really insurmountable, unless you just give up and surrender. And there's always people willing to help as
Yes.
well if you reach out and say, I need help. I think a lot of people, especially young men, stop themselves from asking for help in a bunch of different scenarios, because we're taught that real men don't need help and we stand on our own 10 toes and all that good stuff. But it's great to ask for help, and people want to feel helpful and useful, and whatever the case is.
Yeah. So good. One of my favorite questions to ask our guests on this interview series is, there's students out there that are interested in music production. They're interested in
Mhm.
working in this industry. And a lot of times students think that they have to wait until after high school to start their career, to start on this path. But one of my favorite questions is, what is something that high school students can do right now while they're still in high school today, something actionable that they can do today that's going to help them, really get a jump start on that path?
I would say, get involved in anything that excites you. Like, follow, if you're excited about, even if it's not exactly what and you don't need to know exactly what you want to do. Just get involved with the local scene. If there's all ages shows in your area, just start showing up and talk to people. Hey, I want to help out with I can carry some cables and collect tickets or whatever the case is. Just get involved and show up and be part of the scene wherever it is. And if there's not anything going on, create it. And even if it's just, hey, we've got my buddy's garage, or we're at a VA club or anything like that, and we're gonna find our friend's band and my other buddy's band, and we're gonna put a show together every month, and it's just gonna be us and our friends. Like, that is the stuff that if that's an example of what excites you, go after that. If it's producing, find, and I'll make beats for you. I need somebody to rap or sing, or a band to work with, and just start doing that. Even if it's terrible, it's awesome because it's exciting to you. So whatever it is that's exciting you, follow that, and take action, and reach out to people who are also excited about the things that you're excited about.
I like just do it, right? Just jump in
Just do
and get
it.
involved.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I will say, like, people, like, going back to my other point about reaching out to ask for help. When you're young, people are love to help young people, especially if you've got some head on your shoulders. You're at least you're humble and you're curious. Those are like
Yes.
non-starters. You got to be humble and curious no matter what. But people are super forgiving of young people when they make mistakes, as long as you're humble and curious and you own up to it. But you know and going back to being bold, I think a lot of people overestimate other people's abilities and they underestimate their own abilities. And I think that causes a lot of people to take no action whatsoever. Like, it's a real big limiting belief. And it's the only real thing that holds us back are those limiting beliefs. So anybody that you want to get in touch with, especially now, is accessible if they're alive. Basically, that's everybody, and that goes from Oprah and Elon Musk and Dr. Dre, or whoever you want to get a hold of. You can find a way, and just email them and say, hey, um I'm in high school, I want to be a producer, or I'm interested in the industry. What advice would you give to me? And so few people do that, and so often those people are wanting to give back because they see themselves in that person. And I was once a 16-year-old, and they probably did something similar, and they want to help. And now you can, we all have, high def phones on our, high def cameras in our phones. Document what you're doing, show people, and then that's your college essay, or that's the start of your resume. And the other thing is, your reputation and your career starts now. How you treat people on your way up is how you might get treated on the way down. So make sure that you are respectful, and that you're taking bold action, but you're not, being a jerk to anyone. Um, and that'll, I believe in karma a lot. So that'll come back to you if you take those actions and you are a kind person.
Yes. I feel like we need to put be humble and be curious on a shirt. I just love that quote so much.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm down.
So, Glenn, I have so much enjoyed chatting with you. You have shared
Likewise.
so much information, and I know students are going to be curious about what you have going on. So, if there's anywhere that they can follow you or learn more about what you're working on, feel free to share that with me. We'll drop it in the comments. And one
Great.
more thing, you mentioned reaching out to people. Young people, students, if y'all don't have a LinkedIn yet, definitely hop on LinkedIn. You can find so many industry professionals there to reach out to, and just ask questions about advice, just like what Glenn shared with us today. So, is there anything else you want to share before we jump off today?
Um, I would just say that, if when you do reach out to people, make sure that you're figuring out a way to provide value, and you've actually done your homework on that person. The worst emails or LinkedIn messages that I've received are people that it's just a copy paste. They don't know who I am. They haven't tried to learn who I am or provide any value, and they're just trying to extract value and pick my brain. Please don't use that phrase. You know, Find a way, even if you're like, oh, I don't know how to give value. Well, you do if you come in curious and knowledgeable. Hey, I read your article, or I just listened to the song that your label did with this artist, and I was really curious. You guys marketed really cool on TikTok. And I find the marketing person on LinkedIn, which is totally possible. How did you guys do that? Well, already, because you came in educated
Yes.
to that person, you are going to want to respond and say, you know what, this guy is curious, or this young woman's curious. And then you've built a relationship. And then a couple of years down the line, when you need an internship, hey, remember me? We talked about this thing a while ago, and now, because you were kind and curious and all that good stuff, they're going to give you a shot at working with them. And like I said, your reputation starts, very earlier than you think it does,
Yes.
before you even have, quote unquote real job in whatever industry you pursue, whether it's the creative arts or entertainment or anything else.
Oh, so good. So good. Well, Glenn, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for your time. And
Thank you.
everyone that's listening, if you are interested in the entertainment, music, or sports industry, we have a full library of interviews just like this. Be sure and check them out.